And Sherry, thanks very much for talking to Business Spectator.
Pleasure.
I'm talking to you today, of course, as the head of Carnival Australia, which is it is the world's largest cruising company, and you have brands Cunard and P&O, etc. But originally you were in Westpac, of course, and known to many people, head of the Bank of Melbourne at one stage, which is now revived, and head of Bank of New Zealand. Why did you change direction?
I changed direction really because I got the opportunity. And I think after 12 years in banking, doing lots of fantastic and incredibly interesting jobs, it's hard to keep finding the next really interesting job. Some of my colleagues said they thought I'd gone a bit feral. I'd been in New Zealand for too long as well. But when this came my way, it was just one of those opportunities that was completely left field and tempted me because of its difference, in fact.
As a banker, your numeracy, if you like, and your ability to look at figures, what did you see in the statistics of cruising that made a difference to you in making that decision one time?
Well, I saw a business in Australia in particular that needed revitalising. So we'd had a lot of brand damage in the market, and really we just flopped along for 70, 80 years in this market, doing okay, but largely just one ship. And I looked then overseas, and I went and talked to some of the people I now work for in the US. And, in the US it was such a different story. Everyone was doing it. And I guess it begged the question, why couldn't we do that here? Why couldn't we turn it into a really important part of Australia's tourism offering, both for local Australian and New Zealand tourists, but also to bring people from the US and Europe to Australia to travel by sea.
So how many people travel by sea? How many people go on a cruise in Australia each year?
Well, it's grown very dramatically. So 500,000 this year, 500,000 people. And we have an objective of getting to 1 million. So by 2020, I think there will be, and perhaps even earlier, I think there'll be 1 million people a year cruising in Australia.
Well, it's an extraordinary figure. How on earth did it get to 500,000? I mean, statistically, it's like 1 in 40 people from Australia are going on a cruise every year. Why is it so popular?
Well, it's a couple of things. We invested in the ships themselves, so the product is really very good and very contemporary. We've got Luke Mangan restaurants on the P&O ships, but all of the ships and all of the brands have got very contemporary product. It's all-inclusive price. So it's one of those holidays in tough times. If you're looking for value for money, this is a great way to travel. Most people live on the sea, so you can get to the ships very easily, and we've moved ships to Brisbane, Sydney, we've got them out of Melbourne occasionally, Fremantle. So we're trying to capture people's holiday intentions. And also we've put a lot of work into just going out to the market saying this is a great product. If you haven't cruised before, you should try. And interestingly, at the moment we've got a group we're calling the Landlubbers on board one of the ships.
Right.
And they're a group of people who posted videos saying we're landlubbers and we will never cruise. And we said to them, okay, we'll pick the half a dozen best landlubbers and we'll see if we can convert you, and that's happening as we speak.
But you can't, I would say you can't keep that sort of momentum up, but a growth rate of 27% now certainly can't be kept a secret. And there are cruise companies from all around the world now coming into Australia, aren't there? So how do you face that challenge that you have had a success and that is now obvious on a global basis? Overseas tourism markets are even flatter than our own, so of course the ships can come here quite easily. How do you deal with that?
Well, two ways. I mean, one is the home-ported ships, and we run all the home-ported ships, both Princess and P&O brands. The home-ported ships operate in Australian dollars. So that's actually a relatively risk-free holiday for Australians. You don't have to worry about currency arbitrage, even though the Australian dollar is strong at the moment.
Well, you'd never worry about it at the moment. You'd be worrying that you're missing an opportunity to go and spend your dollars.
Well, there's a second group of people who are, of course, travelling on our ships in other parts of the world as well.
Yes.
So that's grown very dramatically.
Is that actually the spur of growth that we're seeing?
No, it's the domestic that's the biggest spur. Both have grown, but it's the domestic that absolutely is the growth engine. And with all the ships coming down, I guess I would say we've built a market now. And once people get cruising, and for those people who love cruising, they go again and again. So our repeat rate is 50%. It's very high. And I'm not sure there's any other part of tourism that would say once people love your product, they'll come back again and again and again. Whereas in fact, the art of getting people to cruise really is to get them to do it the first time, and then there's a very big group of those people will go, that's actually the way I want a holiday forever.
Is there a risk of a discount war or a price war when you have various companies coming in to this single market that is outstanding?
That question's being asked a bit at the moment, but I think we can hold price. We're yet to see exactly what our competitors are going to do. But the previous seasons they've come into the market, and they have been coming in now for a couple of years, we've managed to hold price because people value brand, and our ships are the only ships that trade in Aussie dollars. All of the competitor ships come from the Northern Hemisphere and operate in US dollars. So there is a segment of the market that we've captured, which is the group that don't really want the hassle of having to change their money. And we continue to grow that segment of the market.
Just one more observation about you trying to get to this million figure, which would be almost inconceivable, except that we know that 500,000 already go, so it's not as crazy as it sounds at first glance. What would you have to achieve? Would you have to get a new demographic on board to get those numbers?
No, we wouldn't. What we'd need to achieve is, we'll obviously need to bring more ships into the market because there's not enough capacity at the moment. The piece of the market that would get us there is what we call a contemporary segment. And they're essentially families with kids and often extended families, travelling with grandparents and so on, who have probably been to the Gold Coast, who've done lots of the other things and are really looking for something else where everybody gets to find their own holiday. And it's our great selling point. If you're travelling with your parents and your kids, each group can find something that is about them.
Yes, and it's suitable to them. I understand that. With the 500,000 figure, what percentage of that 500,000 is represented by your brands?
Our brands are about 380,000 of that.
Right. And I assume you're hoping to keep that ratio or improve that ratio?
Yeah, we'd want to hold that. We don't necessarily need to improve it, but we'd certainly want to hold that sort of ratio.
And just talking about yourself, Anne, and your change to this business. Before you were in Westpac as head of Bank of New Zealand, you were the Office of the Status of Women. The banking industry, and certainly at the time you were there, the upper reaches at the board level and senior executive level, the gender balance was reasonable compared to other industries. How does the shipping industry rate against banking?
In general terms, you'd have to say this is a very male industry. And
not too many female captains?
Well, we've had our first female captain here in the market.
Right.
So there's a handful of women coming through on the ships. The engineering side, there's fewer women. On the hotel side on the ships, of course, there are many women. So it depends. In the upper levels of management of cruise shipping around the world, there's a handful of women. So we have a little way to go, I think, in this sector.
And from your career perspective, most people would know that you were in banking and then in cruise ships, which would seem a jump. But even prior to that, you were a radiographer, right? Once upon a time?
Once upon a time, yeah.
But for people looking at your career and trying to emulate that career trajectory, if you like, in some fashion, and also that you're on boards, you're on the board of Wilson HTM and other leading organisations. What advice do you give to younger people now in the early stages of management and how to have a career like you've had, because it's diverse? Was yours opportunistic? Is that the word? Is that the key word to understand the Anne Sherry career path?
Yep, probably. I think opportunistic is a good word to describe it. And also I've probably been seen to be taking risk. I'm not sure I've felt it was as risky as others saw it, but if an opportunity came that I thought was really exciting and that had stretch, I'd grab it. So going from government to Westpac, everyone in government thought I was completely mad. Everyone in Westpac thought I was mad at the time as well. Going from doing a health background, going into government, which I did, and then of course from banking into cruise shipping. There's not a logic to that unless you look underneath it. And there were great opportunities that came my way. In each occasion, I've taken the risk to change industry, often change cities, sometimes change countries, to grab those jobs, and in a sense use them to broaden my skill space. In each of them, I've learned something new, and I've got another string to my bow. So I've Oh, and I do recommend it. I say to people, you know, there are some people who love just doing the same thing from go to woe. I'm not one of those people. What I like is finding the next thing that challenges, stretches, and where I learn something. And in this job, I have to tell you, I've learnt a lot. I didn't know very much about engineering and ships and ports before I came into the job, but I know a lot about it now.
I'm sure you do. And Sherry, thanks very much for talking to Business Spectator.